For more on these protests in Hong Kong, joining me in the studio is Sourabh Gupta, a senior Asia-Pacific International Relations Policy Specialist at the Institute for China-American Studies. Thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome.
Let's just say, these local elections have traditionally garnered very lukewarm interest. I mean, some seats even go unopposed, but this is the first time every seat is being contested. What does this tell us?
It tells us there's a lot of interest in the elections, and this is going to be a sort of barometer of how the general electorate feels with regard to the protest activity and also what stimulated the protest activity, the extradition bill.
Okay, and so the actual council itself, the local council, they have very little power though, don't they? And yet we're seeing great interest in these elections. How will that affect the future policy making?
You know, we have to give credit to Hong Kongers. Even in the last election, a little under 50% turned out for that election, even though it doesn't have much power, as you just talked about. In this election, I'm anticipating a much greater turnout, and it will go to show that Hong Kongers are engaged in their way of life. There is this impression that Hong Kong is not democratic enough. I think Hong Kong is democratic enough. There is space for expansion of representation, but this just goes to show how lively Hong Kong is at its grassroots in terms of politics, frankly.
Right, and so how do you think these polls are going to affect the ongoing protest movement then?
I think it'll send a very clear message to both sides, first of all, I should say. To the protesters, it'll send a message that there are means by which there are civil and non-violent means how one can get one's voice heard. And this is a great opportunity to do so, because my expectation is that the opposition, I shouldn't call it the protest side, the opposition will do better this time around in the elections, simply because I think there is anger with regard to that there was poor judgment with regard to the extradition bill. But I think it also holds very well for the government side to show that Hong Kong is lively, that the rule of law operates, and that politics is exercised in the institutional framework in which it should, and that this provides a means for addressing future grievances, frankly.
Well, but you know, this fugitive bill has been dropped, and yet the protest movement is showing no sign of compromise or giving up, you know. Where do we go from here for that?
Oh, I think the protest movement is frankly on the wrong side in terms of the issue at this point of time. Their voices have been heard. Extradition bill has been moved. There is action in terms of addressing the issue of police brutality, but most of the other demands are simply demands which cannot be won on the streets. They must be won at the negotiating table, and the Hong Kong government has gone beyond what any sitting government would do in trying to accommodate and listen to those grievances. The time has come to move off the street and back onto the negotiating table.
Right, so one final question for you. What are your personal predictions? How do you think these elections will actually go?
The way I feel the elections will go, much higher turnout. I think not necessarily, the opposition will do better than previously, although it will not get that majority in terms of district councils. And it will just show that Hong Kong is alive and that there are civil mechanisms with regard to addressing difficulties. And I think this will draw out some of the energy, suck out some of the energy from protest, frankly.
Sourabh Gupta, so good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Welcome.